Hi there and welcome back to MassiveSynth.com tutorials. This is part 2 in this series we're doing this month based around building an electro track using Native Instruments Massive and some kind of other sort of native plugins with Logic and just processing these sounds, making a bass sound, making a sub, making a lead and just processing it all. So in part 1 we made the bass patch in Massive. And in this tutorial we're going to be bouncing this down to audio, EQing it a little bit, sidechaining it to the kick drum to just increase our kind of headroom, and adding a sub underneath the bass drum, underneath the bass line to sort of deal with the sub frequencies, and yeah, just kind of using some sidechain methods really. So we've got this bass patch here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce this down to audio, and I'm actually going to loop it for kind of like 8 bars here, and then just take the nicest section, because I noticed on this level here there's kind of some fluctuations with the kind of level that's going on. I haven't actually got the restart via gate going. I quite like that sort of sound that we had without it. I mean, that might be quite nice as well, but so let's just bounce this. And actually we could do some quite cool trick in Logic where you can hit Control and B, and then I can just bounce in place, and destination, select new track, mute the original. We haven't got any effects or plugins on there yet, so ignore this. Include an audio tail in the file in the region just in case there's any kind of weird decay on the sound. Make sure we don't normalize it, hit OK. And automatically we have our bass line in here. And we've got the new channel mixed at the same level. So it's not too much fluctuation going on there, so I could probably just go ahead and take these first 2 bars of the loop. Just zoom in on the end there, and just so there's no clipping, just do a little fade out. And let's play it back with the kick drum. Another thing to bear in mind here is the levels that I've got these 2 channels, my kick drum and my bass, going, which is leaving a nice, 5-6 dB of headroom in the track, which is kind of what we want really. So first off, I'm going to EQ and sidechain this a little bit. So when we add a sub, if I look at this multimeter here, we can close Massive now. I've got quite a lot of frequency going on here in the bass, which I don't really want because it's playing alongside this kick that's also got a lot of kind of power around 60 Hz. So what I'm going to do is add an EQ here, Logic EQ, but obviously, Ableton, Cubase, Fruity Loops, you've got the same thing, and just roll it off. Keep the slope about 24 dB. I don't want it too brutal really. I'm just up to about 122 Hz. And I'm just rolling all that sub frequency away from that bass line to make space for the actual sub that we're going to make in a second. So, and another thing here is we can get into some side chaining now. And one thing I noticed when you do side chaining is you want to maximize the amount of headroom you've got in your track. So when I'm looking at this kick drum, it's peaking at -7.4. When I add the bass on top, it's going up to -5. So this bass is adding an extra, it's decreasing the amount of headroom we've got on our track by about 2 dB, and we want to get that back really. And the way we can do that is by sidechaining, and this is how I set sidechaining up in Logic. I'll duplicate the kick channel, pull these hits down, so I've got another separate kick channel, name this sidechain, or sidechain trigger, and I actually want to make the length of these much shorter, because it's this first kind of really loud section of the kick that I want to sort of sidechain the bass. So that's where the sort of the power is coming from and where the kind of the headroom is reducing. So I'm actually going to make this sidechain trigger a lot shorter than this kick drum. So it's something more like that. It doesn't really matter if it clicks. So something more like that. And then what I can do is set the channel to no output, so it's just a trigger now. We're not going to hear the kick drum. And so if we can move this up, select this bass line here that we've got, go into dynamics, compressor, sidechain option here, receive the sidechain info from audio 3, the sidechain trigger that we've just set up, and start setting this sidechain. So reduce the gain down to 0 again. I'm going to put it on peak, the ratio up to about 3:1. Have a really fast attack on there and a much faster release as well. Maybe push the compressor threshold up a little bit. It's a bit brutal at the moment. And let's see how that fares with the kick drum. And I notice we're still getting this spike here, and that's around this section here, the track where we're getting that spike in volume. So what I could do here is maybe just edit the audio a little bit further. So it's that very first hit. And what I could do here is maybe just do a little bit of a fade in. See if that gets rid of it. See, we were at about -5 dB before. It's now, we got rid of that spike in the audio there, or in the kind of overall volume. So in the large part, the bass line is only increasing the volume of the overall track by about 0.5 dB, which is something we can live with really. Okay, so next we're going to move on to layering a sub with this bass line. Right then, so the best way we can start by making a sub for this track is to duplicate the massive patch we had for the bass and copy the MIDI down and then make this into more of a sub. The reason for just duplicating that massive patch is that we'll have the same envelope kind of settings for this sub, so it's got the same sort of tail and kind of general sort of shape as the bass patch itself, because it's just going to be layering underneath. We don't want it to be a separate thing. We want to sound like it's just one kind of solid bass sound with kind of nice kind of lower mids and the sub. So what we can do with this patch we duplicated, mute the two oscillators that were creating that sound, turn on oscillator 3 and make this a sine wave, and all this extra kind of like dimension expander tube, the sample and hold, turn that off, turn the EQ off. We can we'll see what it's like with the glide on there for now. The main thing is to just take this pitch down by 2 octaves. Let's get our multimeter up. So that's pretty nice, the sub frequency what we want, around kind of 60 Hz and below really. Sort of 50 to 80 Hz or 50 to 100 Hz is pretty good for sub. So we could actually Make sure it's on monophonic, of course. And just tweak some of the envelope settings we've got that's modulating this kind of cut-off frequency. It's a bit smoother, there's not so much of a pluck on or a click on there. And let's close that now. And another thing we want to do is maybe change some of the MIDI notes we've got here. So if we play this with the bass line and everything, we maybe want to sustain some of those notes. And I mean, the bass line's playing on a lot of the kick drums as well, so ideally you just kind of move these out of the way, but it's going to be difficult because all the bass notes are on the kick drum. So what we'll do is we'll have some long sustained notes here, like this, and then put some extreme sidechain settings on to get them out of the way of the kick. And do the same over for this part of the bass. And maybe bring those down by an octave, and I know we can keep them the same, but so we've got something like that. This now. And then just edit the tail of these so they're not quite so long. Another thing we can do, I mean, it's mainly like we're getting sub-frequencies there, but turn on your EQ and do quite a brutal slope for this one, 24, 36 dB slope. Just take off all the mids and tops, so we're just getting sub-frequency on this channel. Okay, so that's pretty nice, but if I play this with a kick drum now, getting a couple of dB sort of increase in the overall headroom. So we want to get that, we want to reduce that really, so we can do some side chaining again with this sub. So set the sidechain input, sidechain trigger, turn this gain off, keep it at 0, put it on peak here. Really fast attack, fast release, push the ratio up. Something like 4/1, so we're getting around about 8-10 dB reduction there. See how that kind of sounds with the kick. If you notice, before we were getting a boost of around 2 dB there. It's now the kick drum plays back, and when we add the sub to the kick drum, and obviously make sure the sidechain trigger's triggering that sidechain there, we're getting no increase in volume whatsoever. So basically that sidechain is doing its job. Lay it with the bass. And we've got our kick drum, our bass line and our sub, and we're not getting too much of a maybe 1 dB increase in overall volume with the bass and sub added to the kick. So we've successfully sidechained those sounds to the kick drum, and it's quite a solid kind of foundation to build the rest of the track on top really. Maybe turn that sub down. And there we have it, this sort of bass and sub kind of sidechain processed with the kick drum, and in part 3 we'll be making a lead sound in massive to go on top of that bass. So yeah, thanks for watching this tutorial. Hope you found it useful. Any questions, then please get in touch, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers, bye.